afternoon, and thanks for joining us on this edition of Race on Main Street. Welcome. We're glad to have you with us, and I want to extend a very warm thank you to the Philly Cam Studios for having us here. They provide such a great show for us. I just want to say thank you to them. I don't want them to get lost in the shuffle. So if you're watching from Boston or New York or Washington, D.C. or right here in Philadelphia, thanks for joining us. We have a great show planned for you today. In a little while, Wayne Lippincotte from Harris Lippincotte Insurance will be joining us to talk all about risk factors affecting middle-class America and Main Street America. So we're very, very, very pleased to have him on as a guest today and thankful for having him. But before we get started, I want to introduce my co-host and my business partner from Simon Capital Management, and my brother, of course, Stuart Race. Stuart, it's another great show, although it's rainy in Philadelphia. It's a rainy day again. So
Here we are again.
I'm not sure what's going on.
We seem to give the weather report every time, but you know, that's what it is.
Yeah, that's all right.
It's a rainy, blustery fall day.
Yeah, it is. It is. So it's not the nicest of days. So wherever people are joining us, hopefully, maybe there's a little more sunshine there than here. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so I know you have some great stuff for us, sort of intertwined with the idea of risk.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Let's jump in.
Absolutely. With Wayne's appearance here, it occurred to me as I was sitting in my lonely writer's room the other day trying to come up with ideas for the show that we should talk about risk. And I don't know if I told you, but recently one of the kids, Abby, had a fundraiser, and suddenly I received GQ magazine. Now I know I'm a little bit maybe on the old side.
You're a GQ guy, right?
Well,
Come
maybe
on.
Esquire, whatever. But so I'm reading GQ because it's in the house, and I come across an article on a pop star.
Okay.
And I don't want to say who the pop star is because I happen to like the pop star's work. So all right. But in the article, she indicated that her most recent album was a risk. She took a risk
With the album.
Well, the content of the album, the title of the album, even she said the quote was about, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't want to, but the quote, the paraphrase of the quote had to do with the idea that she said you don't understand she was telling the interviewer, you don't understand what a risk it was to name the album this,
right?
Because it's really something when you put yourself out there like that, and what if people didn't understand, and so on and so forth. And I got to thinking about, what is
risk?
Yeah. What is risk, and what is risk for Main Street?
Right.
Okay. Risk for Main Street is saying, I'm going to accept that promotion, that maybe not a promotion, but I'm going to accept that reassignment to that other department because my boss is telling me I'm at my ceiling here. Now this may fall on its face, but I'm going to take that risk.
Right.
Or risk is saying, I've hit my ceiling in my job, and I'm going to go out and start my own shop. And I'm even going to maybe put some of my hard-earned money into that, in the way of that.
I mean, we see that every day.
Sure.
Businesses where we come across folks, they'll call us and say, hey, you know anybody who might be able to provide like a home equity line of credit for me? Oh, what's the reason? Well, I decided to break from my company and do exactly what you just said. Put my money where my mouth is, so to speak, related to my expertise. And even more so, yeah, you're right, that's risk. I'm going to take some of the capital out of my home or my savings account, whatever it might be, to go for it.
And I'm going to, and now I'm going to meet a payroll, which is that's always my go-to, meeting a payroll.
Yep.
I'm going to pay, the rent. It's my name on the thing. So with all due respect,
there's risk and risk.
With all due respect to artists, because I love art. I'm an art guy, and I understand what her point was. I think that on Main Street, when we're talking about risk, with all due respect to this young woman, I think that the risk that takes place in the lives of people on Main Street is a lot different than deciding on what to name your next album.
Right, that's right. I mean, that's not going to make or break whether or not you feed your family. That's risk.
Sure.
Yeah.
And of course, the other thing is, and I don't, I wonder if it might be valuable for us to talk about the concept of risk a little bit, risk in everyday life, because people it's not that they don't understand, it's that everybody grumbles about having to pay their insurance bill or takes a great amount of oh my God, did you hear what that hospital bill was? if thank God he had insurance,
Right.
that kind of situation. So the concept of spreading risk
Right.
is something that is probably something that people need to be aware of when they're paying that insurance bill.
Well, it's funny when we think about risk and the idea of spreading risk. I'm not so sure that Main Street middle class America, I don't know if they could survive or function without the ability to spread risk. So you think about, the super wealthy, they might not need to cover the risk. They can afford to cover it themselves. The middle class group of folks, if they're not spreading that risk among the population, it's going to be very, very troublesome for any of them to be able to sort of self-fund the idea of having to pay a very extensive hospital stay, a banged up car. I mean, you don't have to do much damage to a car.
To really set yourself back.
That's right, to rack up a pretty extensive bill. So you talk about some of the everyday little fender benders out there, to not be able to spread that risk around, yes, that would be a troublesome thing, I think most importantly for that middle class segment of the country.
Yeah. So you were talking about a situation that you had.
Yeah, mine was a little bit different. I needed to have a basic medical test done, and the doctor had ordered the test. And the insurance company said, no, you have to start with this, first test prior to that, a little bit more basic. Mm-hmm. And his response was to the insurance company, you don't know anything about being the doctor and what's going on here kind of thing. Relying on you to make those decisions, you talk about spreading, where the risk might lie.
Sure.
Who's making those decisions for you? So I was, it's something that everybody's faced with that. We hear about it all the time where somebody comes in. And I guess, look, I understand that they're trying to prevent runaway testing and things like that among the insurance world. But it's always odd to me to think who's making the decision at that corporate level compared to very, very sophisticated doctors who you'd like to think are making the right decision. I'm sure they are. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah, which is slightly, we'll have to do a show on that, on who's making the decisions. But the idea of, everybody, I don't think anybody starts out the day saying, well, today's the day, there's commercials where the guy gets a Post-it note and it says, today's the day for your heart attack.
Right.
I don't think that it's sort of like, if you think about it, it's sort of like a blind circumstance. We all start out the day healthy and okay, I guess, sort of.
Expecting it to be great.
And during the course of the day, right? So we can never tell which one of us is going to be the person that has a very bad day.
Right.
So given that circumstance, it makes sense for all of us to sort of give a cushion for everybody else. You never know if it's going to be you.
Right. My thought behind it always, and this is just my own personal piece to it, is that over-insure yourself, because when you have the problem, you want to know you're fully protected.
Belts and suspenders.
Belts and suspenders. You say it all the time, belts and suspenders. Okay. When it comes to those kinds of things, that's sort of where I fall with things. And all the way from very, very tiny things to very, very significant items, to me it makes sense. Is there a cost to it? I think the cost is really, I know that there are going to be problems that creep up in life, in everybody's life, whether it's a fender bender, whether it's even a minor medical kind of circumstance. A kid falls out of a tree, breaks his arm. In some cases, there are unfortunate premature deaths and disabilities. Those things are absolutely going to happen. So as a result of it, Joanne and I have always taken the position like, we'll sacrifice something else to make sure those
areas. Pay a little now.
Right, to make sure that we're protected in the long run. And hopefully, it's items that we don't have to use. That's what everybody's hope is. But overall, we all want to know that things are covered if there's a problem. So
I had just to close to bring the topic around and sort of highlight the idea of spreading risk. I had one of my roommates in college. And this was back in the 80s, obviously, so it was a different time.
Right.
But he used to say that his father used to say, I don't need insurance, I have 5 children. With the idea, but if you think about it, that really illustrates what we're talking about. Dad was saying, well, my one-man risk is actually spread out over these 5 people, so now I only have, less than 20% of the risk.
Right.
Because, so that was my, that puts
and those 5 kids all bought insurance for him because they didn't want to
have to pay out of their pockets.
They didn't want to either have the time commitment that they really might not be able to really satisfy,
that's the whole thing,
or satisfy caring for this person, and so as a result they figure they'll cover the cost to protect themselves.
Every new kid, he spread the risk a little bit more.
That's right.
So, well, our guest today, where am I? I'm here. Okay, our guest today, I really have to get that right, is a guy by the name of Wayne Lippincotte. Wayne is a partner with the Harris Lippincotte Insurance Agency. Wayne was born in New Jersey and still resides in the area. He's actually, there's an office, a Harris Lippincotte office in Media and a Harris Lippincotte office in New Jersey. Wayne, we were chatting before, and I found out Wayne volunteered to go to college at the University of Tennessee, and hopefully he's going to have a lot to say about risk. So, Wayne, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, John.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, I guess always to get started and it makes some sense is tell us a little bit about the agency. Tell us a little bit about its start to through the years, where you've gotten to now, and then we'll dive into your expertise on this idea of risk and all the components to it.
Yeah, a Harris Lippincotte Agency. I started with Tim Harris, myself, about 5 years ago, and we had worked for AAA Mid-Atlantic for quite a few years, which is a great organization, and they have millions of members, all over the United States, Canada, other countries, and we formed a nice relationship with our clients, and were able to provide them with what they needed, mostly in the property casualty lines of insurance. When we started this, we kind of expanded our horizons. We cover a lot more commercial, health insurance, life insurance, management, as you were saying, managing risks. We do a whole lot more now, and there's always a place, I think, in this time and age for experienced people to review people's insurance, to review their risk. I think that with all the avenues that the country's going through, that you can obtain a product, whether it be a t-shirt online or tickets to a show or insurance, if you're getting free advice from insurance professionals like ourselves, it doesn't cost anything extra. It gives you the opportunity to learn more, and the educated consumer is the best. So I think that's what we strive to provide at our agency. And
one other question that I have about that is, and you sort of made mention of it, is there's so much insurance right now that, and I'm not going to say any names, but we all know who they are, where it's online services. Do you see a lot of folks coming back or to you from there because maybe they didn't quite understand what they were buying into or getting, or understand their policies because they looked just at maybe the bottom line price tag, but didn't really see what the meat of the coverage? You're smiling, so I'm assuming that this is something that you deal with on a regular basis.
Yes and no. I mean, the millennials and all coming in, they're still, push the button, give me my card, let me go, but they're young, and a lot of them haven't moved into the realm of where they have a lot of assets to protect. We all were there, right? But we get them on the back end after they've screwed up, right? And, we fix their problems. That's what keeps me in business, and, I've been an insurance professional for 35 years. So, I mean, I can usually take somebody's thing, and it may be hard on them at first to clean up the mess they committed by. When I say mess, I mean they may have bought a bare bones thing and their car's not covered for enough and they owe the loan company more money, or they lapsed their home insurance because they thought it was escrowed and they just didn't pay it. We fix all those problems. Whereas you have an insurance office or an insurance professional looking out for it, we're on the phone calling them or telling them to come in. You got to sign a paper. And main thing now is insurance is a contract, and you guys know whether you're doing financial, you're doing property and casualty, commercial, it's a contract for us to protect a risk. You've put your faith in the company, so you have to sign some paperwork. People hate to sign paperwork.
Do you find it, Wayne? Do you find it also that you said that their escrow has lapsed or something like that? Do you find it that works in the other direction also, that sometimes they're over-insuring themselves because the e-products or what have you will oversell?
Almost never, because it defaults to the lowest, because I think that those, I'm going on speculation because I don't know how they set up their servers, but they default to the lowest so that the premium looks good and they're selling just churning the stuff out, you know.
So most times
We
it's gonna
find
be,
it's way reduced, yeah.
so it's going to be that's going to be the most
Correct.
situation. Is
They
people
don't
who are
know their
underinsured.
options to insure properly, or all the options that are available to them.
And that's
I
what
see.
seems to make the most sense by working with a professional. I think you hit the nail on the head in a big way. So you can go with plan A, plan B, plan C, just as an example. If plan A comes with a veteran professional of 35 years, I would imagine you know a few things about insuring risk and what works and what doesn't work for a great variety of people. If you reduce that, maybe the price marginally, because I've never noticed it to be such a gigantic difference where that piece, that component of information and somebody who I can rely on, it seems like there's such tremendous value in that. When people sit down and really weigh the two, plan A makes a whole lot more sense when you know you have somebody looking out for you, as opposed to you having to, in some cases, kind of guess correctly as to what makes the most sense when you don't have that professional.
Absolutely. I always like to say, and knowing you gentlemen, I know Stuart quite a long time, that I don't sell insurance. I educate people about insurance and give them choices, okay? If they know what they're looking for to protect and what's available, they make their own choices. They ask me a lot of times, Wayne, do you think I should take that option? And I'd say to them, I can't tell you whether you should take that option, but I will tell you, if you're taking that option, you're better covered, okay? And, you know, well, tell me what you would do. Well, I would take that option, or I wouldn't take that option because you're retired and you don't need income loss or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, I educate, I don't sell insurance, just like you guys review personal finance, and you don't, you know, set the people on the right, correct path to, you know, do what they need to do to achieve success.
Right. Sure. Makes sense.
So let's talk about clients. Your average client. Who needs your services?
Well, just about everybody, because we are not specialized or anything. I mean, we go from the first-time car buyer or the person moving into their first apartment, and to, you know, financial professionals and doctors and lawyers. So everyone has, as you guys explained in the initial part of the show, everyone has risks they need to protect, right? And it's actually quite unique that a gentleman that will look to you for financial advice and go through that educational process will continue to not review their health care coverage or their company's insurance, or I'm too busy, you know, I'm too busy, you know. I just like to use a quick story. I recently went into a business who the gentleman bought 2 buildings on a piece of property and bought a commercial building policy for the property, which covers him for about $600,000, which is underinsured there because the buildings are almost worth $1 million. And the policy gave him $5,000 personal property. Well, he recently just started a snow blower pooling outlet with snow blowers, lawn cutters, and everything. He has over $180,000 worth of inventory that he has on loan for the floor plan, which he owes the money for, and he has $5,000 a person. Because when he bought the property, he only needed the policy. He didn't look at it. And it was nice of him to invite me in, but if I had just gone by his store, he probably said, I'm busy, you know. So it's very important for people to take a look at their insurances. You're seeing it with the healthcare plan now. People are told to review their Medicare Advantage, or because of so much change in the industry, the way you should be covered, what you can find for yourself at the best value. So you should talk to an insurance professional.
Wayne, something like that that's daunting. Okay,
yeah.
I mean, first of all, it's a ton of paper, and maybe for some people it could be daunting because it's a ton of online work that they're not familiar with. It's jargon, and is there, you know, when you say provide education, is that the kind of thing that if I'm a consumer and I get the idea that I need some kind of coverage, and I'm told review, can I come to you and have you help me with that?
Absolutely. In fact, it's there in both avenues. You could do the research online. I would suggest that you do both. That way you know what questions to ask me. Well, I get educated consumers like yourself saying, I found this option available online. Do you offer that? That's a fine question. And like I said, I'm more of a insurance professional than I am I'm not an insurance salesperson. If I tell you that you have a good product, I will tell you that you should stay with that product. You know?
And one of the interesting things that you made mention was the idea of, we're talking about this idea of reviewing annually as a kind of how-to. So two things. One, I may have told you this before, but my in-laws used to always talk about that they would go away like the first of the year, and it would be their time to review everything. So they would plan for it every year. They'd go away for a weekend, but it was like a working weekend to go over and review all of these things. So, and my father-in-law's issue was that he wanted to make sure my mother-in-law wasn't as interested in it, that at least once per year she got a thorough sit down where they could sit down and go over these things together. So it's interesting that you make mention of that. But more importantly, I think you mentioned the idea that there are so many items that change in the insurance world. And I see this over and over in our profession where people will say to themselves, well, nothing's really changed on my end. So what do I need to review this for? It was fine last year, it'll be fine this year. And I think they're missing the idea that while nothing may have really changed on their end, the insurance programs that they have may have changed dramatically. And if you look at medical insurance over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, it has changed dramatically year after year after year.
Scott, it isn't just medical insurance.
Well, no, I know that, but I mean that's so top of mind.
That's what people don't understand.
So even if you haven't had, these added a kid, added a house, added a business.
That's why I was going to say annually might not even be enough for some people. They have life-changing events throughout the year. And you just talk to us about it. It doesn't have to be the minute it happens. I have very conscientious insureds who call me 3-5 times before they make a move. Okay, they want to know every move they can make. That's fine. I'm there for them, right? They overkill it a little bit. Like, oh, I'll get you the VIN number. I'm going to look at this car or that car, or I'm going to put my son on in next March, or something. I'm like, some people call me 3 Marches later, instead. And the kid's already crashed the car up. But the life-changing events, then you want to be covered correctly. And if you just wing it, that's the problem. And like I said, with the example I cited with the business policy, he didn't even understand that he had all that risk because he had then started this operation and thought that was good enough. And it was kind of a bother getting the business started to meet with somebody. I think I took 25 minutes of his time, And now he's all happy, and that I was able to get him. Was able to save him any money even because I had to add all this extra coverage that he didn't have. But I actually kept him at about the same cost for his insurance, but he's much better covered now.
Sure, and that's obviously critical. And these are people who are smart, educated, who for whatever reason they shy away from it or are nervous by it or whatever the case may be. And as a result, and I sometimes think that people are afraid to even sort of like look risk so deeply in the eye because, it's not always the idea of dealing with something that's so much fun, like a medical problem or a death or disability, but it's still a reality that we have to face regardless of how uncomfortable it might be.
No one likes insurance because that's the inevitable. In order to use your insurance, you've had a life-changing event that's not good usually because that's there to protect the risk. So, if you could tell me that I could pay $1,000 a year and never have a homeowner's claim, sign me up. Because if you've ever had one and there's water on the floor or the ceiling or wherever, it's a big headache, even though we're there to send the plumber in, send the contractor in to do the work, it's upsetting, and that's something minor, it could be far worse.
Well, helping people out, it's something you do well, and appreciate the time you spend doing that and appreciate the time you spent with us today.
Oh, I appreciate you guys letting me have
thanks for coming
Thanks for coming in.
That's great. That's great.
It's what I have found is that in the businesses that we have owned and the businesses that we deal with people, sometimes it seems to me that insurance is always the thing that they say, well, let's hold off on that because cash flow is tight at the beginning, but it's not something you want to let go by the wayside for too long.
No, I mean, there's no question about it. We all know endless examples where somebody says, oh, if only I would have had put that in place,
There you go.
you know, a month ago or 6 weeks ago or whatever the case may be, we wouldn't be in this predicament. Yeah, I mean, I think really what it comes down to is there is a cost to insurance. We all understand that. And for so many people, again, will say, well, I went a lifetime paying, you know, my homeowner's insurance and I never had a claim. Mm-hmm. All you have to do is introduce them to somebody who had a giant tree, you know, fall on top of the house.
Yeah.
And understand that these things are random. We don't know when they're going to happen, but they do. And you don't want your number pulled and not be covered for
That's
it.
spreading the risk.
Yeah, because, I mean, covering the cost of the new roof because the tree fell through, a lot more expensive than the premium that you're going to be paying.
Not budgeted for.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so fun stuff on the way out.
Yeah.
We started with a pop star.
Yes.
So I figured let's circle around to that. So I looked up yesterday pop albums.
I still don't believe these
Well,
numbers.
it's true. The best-selling
What,
album.
because you read it on the internet, it's true.
It's yes.
No,
it's
I don't agree with this.
Well,
all right, go ahead.
all right.
Explain to everybody. Go ahead, and then they'll know what
The
we're
best-selling
arguing about.
album of all time, which everybody knows, is Thriller, except for you, because you think that some obscure Guns N' Roses album outsold. Forget about Thriller. Outsold AC/DC.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
so Thriller is the best-selling album of all time. It's locked and loaded at 65 million, although there are estimates that 65 million units. There are estimates that it has sold over 100 million units.
It has had to have sold way more than 100 million units. That's what I'm saying. And I don't believe that the Bodyguard soundtrack sold as
number 4.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
It sold more than Bat Out of Hell.
But it sold almost the same amount
Yeah.
as Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. I don't believe it.
Well,
we need
I
a new
thought
researcher.
Okay, we'll have to fire that intern. The thing that I thought was the most interesting out of all of this, though, was that last year, in the year 2014,
Yep.
Thriller was the 14th best-selling album of the year.
Still.
Okay? It came out, what, in 1984?
Yeah, something like that,
It's
early
30
80s. Yep.
years later.
Yep.
It's still in the top 20 of sales.
It's amazing. It is amazing.
So whenever a pop star talks about risk, you can sort of take that with a grain of salt. The only risk is that you might hurt your throat or something. I guess there's no risk in naming the album. So that's what we got on pop stars and the fun stuff on the way out.
Yeah, I still think though that these numbers are not correct.
Well,
I'm gonna have to look them up myself and see.
That's why. But that's why we have interns.
Yeah, but well, somebody did something wrong because, and what Stu was referring to was the idea of Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction.
Appetite for
which I
Destruction.
always
You
thought
seem to
was-
feel is the best-selling album of all time.
Well,
It's not.
all right. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time today. We'll do a little bit more research on this to see if these numbers are actually factual or not. But thanks for joining us. Have a great day in Philadelphia or wherever you're joining us from. Thanks. We'll see you next week. Have a great week.